بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا وعظيمنا رسول الله قال المؤلف رحمه الله. Said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, وأفضل البشر بعد نبينا أبو بكر الصديق, and the best of humans, or the best human after our prophet, meaning after all the prophets, after our prophet in this nation is Abu Bakr, and after all prophets is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the one who is very faithful, the one who is at the maximum level of faith, radiyallahu anhu, may Allah accept from him. ثم عمر الفاروق, then Umar al-Faruq, the one who tells the difference between right and wrong. That is the one who enjoins the good and does not tolerate the evil. ثم عثمان ذو النورين, then Uthman ذو النورين, the one who had the two lights, because he married two daughters of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, not at the same time, of course. ثم علي المرتضى, then Ali, the acceptable one. وخلافتهم ثابتة على هذا الترتيب, على هذا الترتيب أيضا, and their caliphates were, or is, and their caliphate, the singular word there, is confirmed according to this sequence also. SharH, the explanation. أنه يجب الإيمان أن أفضل هذه الأمة بعد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هؤلاء الأربعة, is that it is obligatory to believe that the best of this nation after the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam are those four. على الترتيب الذي ذكره المؤلف, according to the sequence that the author mentioned. يعني what's obligatory, the actual obligation is to believe that those four are the best, not that it is this sequence of all four of them. Not that it is this sequence of all four of them. That's not the obligatory part. وأفضلية الشيخين أبي بكر وعمر, sorry, أما أفضلية الشيخين أبي بكر وعمر, as for the priority and the bestness of the two sheikhs, Abu Bakr and Umar, فأهل السنة كلهم متفقون على ذلك, the people of the prophetic way, all of them are in agreement to that. So that's obligatory to believe too, that those two are the best in their sequence, Abu Bakr then Umar. أما التفضيل بين علي وعثمان, now as for the merit between Ali and Uthman, فَقَدْ اخْتَلَفَ فِيهِ بَعْضُ الْأَئِمَّةِ, some of the imams have differed about this. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ تَوَقَّفْ, some of them were neutral, says Si Fathul Bari. وَلَمْ يَقُلْ بِتَفْضِيلِ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا عَلَى الْآخَرِ, and so whoever was neutral did not say that one of those two was better than the other. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ صَرَّحَ بِأَفْضَلِيَّةِ عُثْمَانِ, and some of them were explicit in the bestness of Uthman. ثم المخالف في أفضلية الشيخين يبدع ولا يكفر. Furthermore, the opponent concerning the bestness of the two sheikhs, you know who the two sheikhs are in this context, Abu Bakr and Umar. Not in the context of hadith, that would be Al-Bukhari and Muslim, nor in another context like in the Shafi'i school, that would be someone else and someone else. So anyone whose opponents concerning the bestness of the two sheikhs in this context is deemed a heretic, yubadda. He is labeled as an innovator in creed, so that makes him a major sinner. Wala yukaffar, and he's not deemed as a disbeliever. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, والخلافة 30 سنة, and the caliphate was 30 years, or is. I said was because this is in the past, even for when the author wrote this, or authored this, it was in the past. But the sentence itself is present tense. And the khilafah is 30 years, meaning was. ثم بعدها ملك وإمارة, then after it is, yani came, monarchy, unjust monarchy, tyrannical monarchy, and emirates. الشرح, the explanation, يدل على ذلك ما رواه ابن حبان وغيره. What proves that is what Ibn Hibban and others narrated. الخلافة بعدي 30 سنة. The caliphate after me is 30 years. He means the guided caliphate. ثم تكون ملكا, then there shall be monarchy. Who was that? Who was the first monarch? That was Muawiyah. That's proof. يعني أن مدة الخلافة الراشدة 30 سنة. He means that the duration of the guided caliphate was 30 years. وهي المدة التي اكتملت للحسن بن علي. And that is the duration that was complete with Al-Hasan ibn Ali. لأنه استخلف بعد أبيه, because he was made a caliph after his father. And not because he's a son though, because he was qualified. Abu Bakr, none of his sons became caliph after him. None of Umar's sons became caliph after him. And as for Ali, his son did become caliph after him, not because of nepotism, but because of qualification. واستمر عليها 6 أشهر, and he kept that position for 6 months. ثم تنازل لمعاوية, and then he retired for Muawiyah to take power, to stop the fighting between the Muslims, to put an end to the civil war. ثم إن أهل السنة اتفقوا بأنه تجب طاعة الخليفة الراشد. And then furthermore, indeed, the people of the prophetic way have agreed that obedience to the guided caliph is obligatory. Notice here, Khalifa has ta marbuta, that makes it a feminine word. But the adjective al-Rashid is devoid of a ta marbuta, because although Khalifa has ta marbuta, it's really a masculine word, because the caliph is only going to be a man anyway. So the Khalifa is only rajul, man. So his adjective is going to be a masculine one. It's obligatory to obey al-Khalifat al-Rashid, not al-Rashida, the guided caliph. فَكَانَ مِنَ الْوَاجِبِ عَلَى الْأُمَّةِ طَاعَةُ عَلِيِّ بْنِ أَبِي طَالِبٍ. And so what was obligatory on the nation was obedience to Ali ibn Abi Talib. كَمَا كَانَتْ تَجِبُ طَاعَةُ الثَّلَاثَةِ الَّذِينَ كَانُوا قَبْلَهُ, just as it was obligatory to obey the 3 before him. لِأَنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى قَالَ, because Allah, exalted is He, said, يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. O those who have believed, obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in charge of you, amongst you, and those in charge amongst you. That's the 59th verse of Surah An-Nisa. فَمَنْ خَرَجَ عَلَيْهِ فَهُمْ عُصَاهُ. So whoever فَمَنْ خَرَجَ عَلَيْهِ فَهُمْ عُصَاهُ. So anyone who mutinied against him, they are disobedient, they are sinners. لَكِنْ مِنْهُمْ مَنْ تَابَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ لَمْ يَتُبْ. But some of them repented and some of them did not repent. تنبيه, notice. يريد بعض الناس هذا اللفظ على أنه حديث. Some people produce this phrase as if it's a hadith. يعني they produce it as a hadith. وهو, which is من مات ولم يعرف إمام زمانه فقد مات ميتة جاهلية. Anyone who died without knowing the Imam of his time has died an era of ignorance, death. وَهَذَا اللَّفْظُ لَا يُعْرَفُ فِي الصَّحِيحِ. And this wording is not known from any authentic hadith. بَلِ الْمَعْرُوفُ حَدِيثُ Muslim. Rather, what is known is the hadith of Muslim. مَنْ خَلَعَ يَدًا مِنْ طَاعَةٍ. Anyone who withdraws a hand from obedience, yani anyone who withdraws his allegiance to the Caliph, لَقِيَ اللَّهَ لَا حُجَّةَ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He will encounter God's judgments without any evidence on resurrection day. لَا حُجَّةَ لَهُ. So that slips some people. La hujjata lahu, this would mean there is no way for him to make any valid ijtihad in this case. If he doesn't have any evidence on resurrection day, he's not going to have any evidence on the earth now for what he did. If he won't have evidence then for what he did on earth, that means he doesn't have any evidence on earth for what he did. If he doesn't have any evidence, there's no way he could have made an ijtihad here. وَمَنْ مَاتَ وَلَيْسَ فِي عُنُقِهِ بَيْعَةٌ. And anyone who died without there being on his neck allegiance, yani without allegiance, مَاتَ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. Then he died an era of ignorance, death. So our teachers, they say he died the death of the era of ignorance. He died the death of the era of ignorance. So that's approximate translation there. When translated that way, that's like idafa. Death of, put of in there makes it idafa. He died the death of the era of ignorance. But this is not idafa here. I'm just pointing this out for a quick benefit. This is sifa wa mawsuf. This is a word with its adjective. So it's an era of ignorance, death. That's closer translation. وَفِي قَوْلِهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, مَنْ خَلَعَ يَدًا مِنْ طَاعَةٍ لَقِيَ اللَّهَ لَا حُجَّةَ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And when he said this hadith, whoever withdraws a hand from the obedience would encounter God's judgment without any evidence for him on resurrection day. دليل على ما مر ذكره أن الذين خرجوا على علي كلهم عصاه or كلهم. It is evidence for what has previously been mentioned that those who mutinied against Ali, all of them are sinners. لأن الرسول قال في هذا الحديث, because the messenger said in this hadith, لقي الله يوم القيامة لا حجة له. He will meet God's judgment on resurrection day without evidence. ومعناه لا يقال فيهم إن لهم يوم القيامة عذرا وحجة. And what this means is that it would not be said about them that on resurrection day they would have an excuse and they would have an evidence or an argument or some point. They don't have a point. Yani, it's completely invalid. وَقَوْلُ بَعْضِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. And the saying of some scholars, إِنَّهُمْ مَعْذُورُونَ لِأَنَّهُمْ اجْتَهَدُوا فَلَا يُلَامُونَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. That indeed they are excused because they made an ijtihad, they made a determination. And so they are not blamed for that. هو كلام غير موافق للنص. It is talk that is non-compliant with the religious documentation. Very important here. Because some people who are affiliated with Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and they accept the scholars, and they accept the four schools, they sometimes put the acceptance of this scholar out of place by holding fast to the word of a scholar instead of taking by a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. It's not because they don't believe in the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it's because they have some misunderstanding. And I'm not imagining this. I've talked to some people. This is what they said. They said, we're not scholars. So who do we take from? We take from the scholars. So yeah, that's true. We agree with that. They say yes. And the scholars, where do they take from? They take from the hadiths and from the Quran. So yeah, that's true. We agree with that too. They say, yeah, okay. So their mistake is they say, and so the word of the scholar is for us evidence, and the word of the prophet is for the scholar evidence. So they're saying there's gap between the hadith and the layman. They're saying the layman cannot, it's like they're saying the layman cannot rely on the hadith if there is the statement of the scholar between him and the hadith. This is a massive blunder here. They say the word of the scholar is the layman's evidence. No, that's not true. The evidence is the Quran and the authentic Sunnah and the consensus of the scholars and the qiyas, the legal comparison of a mujtahid. They're the word of a scholar. They're the legal comparison of the mujtahid. The mujtahid who makes legal comparison. Yeah, that's evidence for us. But not the word of a scholar because he's a scholar is evidence for us. If the scholar said a statement and you found a hadith that contradicts the statement of the scholar, at the very least, you're going to pause there and then go check what's going on. Because you're not going to put the hadith to the side to take the word of a scholar. Shaykh says, وَهُوَ كَلَامٌ غَيْرُ مُوَافِقٍ لِلنَّص. This is talk that is contrary, that is non-compliant with the religious documentation. So the way some of the people who say the wrong thing here argue is that they say, are you a scholar? And then, yeah, even if you were a scholar, they're going to say, you're not a scholar. Who are you? And they would say, are you a mujtahid? So no, we're not mujtahids. So you shut your mouth here. The scholars said, and then they say the wrong thing. The wrong thing that's disproven by the religious documentation. The wrong thing that's disproven by the religious documentation. And they're not going to, their strategy is to get you off of the hadith you want to use. They have a point they want to argue for. Their reference for this point is the statements of some scholars. Yes, very true. And we have a counterpoint we want to argue for, and our reference is going to be some hadiths. So their strategy is to get you off of those hadiths by telling you you're not qualified to use them, and that the qualified scholars didn't use those hadiths as you are in their claim, and that here's the statements of the qualified scholars. So stop saying the wrong thing. You're against Ahlus Sunnah. So that's how they talk. But it's not the case though. Shaykh says, وَلَا مُتَمَسِّكَ فِي هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ لِمَنْ قَالَ مِنْ أَهْلِ هَذَا الْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الَّذِي لَا يَكُونُ تَحْتَ بَيْعَةِ إِمَامٍ إِذَا مَاتَ يَمُوتُ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. And there's nothing to hold fast to in this hadith for what some people of this time say, that the one who does not have any allegiance to an imam, a caliph, by imam here they mean caliph. Some people from this time, so this is different. Some people from this time, they use this hadith for what it can't be used for. So there's nothing to hold on to in this hadith for them. They say that anyone who does not have any allegiance to a caliph, إِذَا مَاتَ يَمُوتُ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً, when he dies an era of ignorance death. So there's two things here. One thing is some people who deny the sinfulness of those who mutinied against Ali for the statements of some scholars, despite this hadith. And another thing is some people who use this hadith to say that if you don't have any allegiance to a caliph, you will die in error of ignorance death, for sure. And so according to them, they say, so for us to avoid this, we must put up a caliph. And then so they say, and our caliph is this guy, Fulan here. Some person. And we pay allegiance to him, and so we are in compliance with this hadith. That's their way. And then, according to them, if you don't pay allegiance to a caliph, actually you're a kafir. And we can stick you up with machine guns. We can rob your jewelry store. We can take all your stuff. وهذا رأي الشرذمة المعروفة بحزب التحرير. And this is the opinion of the known group of thugs called Hizb al-Tahrir, the Liberation Party. And they have other names too. في هذا العصر, at this time, they are contemporaries, and they are a radical group. So because of their militant ideas, they really commit terrorism. They are just a modern take on Khawarij group. They terrorize Muslims. Who are the victims of these people? Not kuffar, Muslims, actually, in Muslim countries. They plant bombs in places and they kill people, etc. Muslims. Atba'u Taqiyuddin An-Nabahani, the followers of Taqiyuddin An-Nabahani, Al-Mutawaffa fi awakhir al-qarn al-rabi'a ashar al-Hijri. The one who died at the end of the 14th century. The 14th Hijri century. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, والمسلمون لا بد لهم من إمام, and the Muslims must have an imam, a leader, meaning a caliph. It is necessary. It is of the utmost importance. ليقوم بتنفيذ أحكامهم, so that he would execute their rules. وإقامة حدودهم, and so that he would establish their borders. وَسَدِّ ثُغُورِهِمْ, and so that he would put troops on the borders. وَتَجْهِيزِ جُيُوشِهِمْ, and so that he would prepare their armies. وَأَخْذِ صَدَقَاتِهِمْ, and so that he would collect their obligatory charities, the zakat. He's going to have a zakat department, the caliph. He's going to have silos for the grains and for the crops. He's going to have land for the animals that are collected. He's going to have vaults for the gold and silver. He's going to have accountants and people who weigh and things like that, and distributors, etc. وَقَهْرِ الْمُتَغَلِّبَةِ, and for defeating invaders. وَالْمُتَلَصِّصَةِ, and for capturing the thieves. وَقُطَّاعِ الطَّرِيقِ, and for defeating the waylayers, the ambushers, the people who stay by the road and they hop out and ambush the caravans, and they do battle with the caliph and his forces, or they do battle with the sheriff. So the caliph takes care of those people too. وَإِقَامَةِ الْجُمَعِ وَالْأَعْيَادِ, and for establishing the Friday prayers and the holiday prayers. وَقَطْعِ الْمُنَازَعَاتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ بَيْنَ الْعِبَادِ, and for intervening in the disputes that take place between God's slave men, slave men and slave women. وَقَبُولِ شَهَادَاتِ الْقَائِمَةِ عَلَى الْحُقُوقِ, and for accepting the testimonies that are given pertaining to the rights of the people. So he's like a judge. وَتَزْوِيجِ الصِّغَارِ وَالصَّغَائِرِ, and giving young men and women in marriage. الَّذِينَ لَا أَوْلِيَاءَ لَهُمْ, those who don't have any guardians. وَقِسْمَةِ الْغَنَائِمِ, and distributing or dividing and distributing spoils, war spoils. وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ, and the likes of that. Subhanallah. Look at these kuffar when they go to war. Who gets the spoils? Only the politicians who sent the soldiers to go fight. The ones who stayed safely in their countries and they wear nice suits and have jewelry and everything, and they became very rich by getting involved in politics, and they have the best healthcare while they impose the cheap Acme brand healthcare on the populace. They didn't break a sweat or put themselves in danger. They reap the benefits of the spoils of war when they conquer some land. And the soldiers, what do they get? They get a medal, maybe. Maybe they get a bonus, maybe. And if they go homeless, then khalas. They're just going to have to be homeless veterans with an American flag or some other flag, walking around with his helmet in the cold. وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ, and the likes of that. But Islamically, who gets the spoils? Those who went to war. SharH, the explanation. قال التفتزاني, التفتزاني said, من الأمور التي لا يتولاها آحاد الأمة. The Caliph takes care of the matters that are not in the charge of the individuals of the nation. فإن قيل لما لا يجوز الاكتفاء بذي شوكة في كل ناحية. And if it were said, why is it insufficient to suffice with someone powerful in every region? ومن أين يجب نصب من له الرياسة العامة? And from where did you get that it's obligatory to put up someone who has general rulership over all the Muslims? قلنا لأنه يؤدي إلى منازعات ومخاصمات. مفضية إلى اختلاف أمر الدين والدنيا. We say because the lack of that leads to conflicts and disputes that lead to unacceptable difference, dissension in the matters of religion and in worldly matters. كما نشاهده في زماننا هذا, just as we witness in this time of ours. That's what Taftazani said. So I don't know how long ago was at Taftazani. Now we don't have Caliph for over 100 years. I believe it's over 100 years now. But Taftazani was before 100 years. انتهى, end quote. يعني أنه يجب أن يكون الخليفة على المسلمين شخصا واحدا. He means that it is obligatory that the Caliph over the Muslims would be a single person. كما كان الخلفاء الراشدون في عهدهم, just as was the case of the guided caliphs during their time. ثم يقول التفتزاني, furthermore, التفتزاني says, who is he? You know, he's one of the explainers of the An-Nasafiyyah Aqidat that we are going over. So the Shaykh ينقل عنه, the Shaykh logs or copies in this explanation of his some of the statements of At-Taftazani, sometimes agreeing with him, sometimes disagreeing with him. And there's no problem with just repeating what he said. If he already said it and it's correct, then he can just say what he said. That's fine. And other scholars have done that. In different books. فَإِنْ قِيلْ, At-Taftazani says, so if it were said, فَلْيُكْتَفَ بِذِي شَوْكَةٍ لَهُ الرِّيَاسَةُ الْعَامَّةِ إِمَامًا كَانَ أَوْ غَيْرَ إِمَامٍ. If it were said, then let there be sufficing with someone powerful, with general rulership, whether he was a caliph or not. فإن انتظام الأمن يحصل بذلك, because the security takes place this way. Slightly loose translation here. Structured security takes place this way. كما في عهد الأتراك, like during the time of the Turks. قلنا نعم يحصل بعض النظام في أمر الدنيا. We say yes, there will occur some order in the worldly matter. ولكن يختل أمر الدين, but then the matter of the religion will be compromised. وهو المقصود الأهم, and that is the most important goal. وَالْعُمْدَةُ الْعُظْمَى, and the greatest pillar. انتهى, end quote. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, ثم ينبغي أن يكون الإمام ظاهرا. Furthermore, it is necessary, it should be, that the imam, that means the caliph, would be apparent. لا مختفيا, not hidden away. ولا منتظرا, nor awaited. Yeah, and he's not going to be the imam and he's hidden away. He's not going to be the imam and we're still waiting for him. So that's refutation of Shiites who have some beliefs like that. Like they would believe someone was the imam, the caliph meaning, and then when they tell you a story, they would say, but we don't know if he was killed or not. So you don't know if he was killed or not, but he's still your imam. He's still the caliph according to you. You don't even know if he's alive. Yeah, he went into Fulan's house. He never came out. Subhanallah wa bihamdih. وَيَكُونَ مِنْ قُرَيْشٍ, and he would be from the tribe of Quraysh, if there were one who's qualified. وَلَا يَجُوزُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمْ, and he wouldn't be from someone else, from some other folk. وَلَا يَخْتَصُّ بِبَنِي هَاشِمٍ وَأَوْلَادِ عَلِيٍّ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ, and it's not special to the clan of Hashim, nor to the descendants of Ali, may Allah accept from him. الشرح أما قوله ظاهرا, the explanation, as for when he said apparent, he would be apparent. فَلِأَنَّهُ يُرْجَعُ إِلَيْهِ, this is because he needs to be resorted to. Someone needs to have contact with him. فَيَقُومُ بِالْمَصَالِحِ, and then he would take care of the welfares. لِيَحْصُلَ مَعَهُ الْغَرَضُ مِنْ نَصْبِ الْإِمَامِ, so that the point of having an imam would be realized. فَلَا يَنْبَغِي أَنْ يَكُونَ مُخْتَفِيًا عَنْ أَعْيُنِ النَّاسِ, and so he should not be someone hidden from the eyes of the people. A مُلْتَزِمًا الْاخْتِفَاء, meaning staying hidden. لأن ذلك ينافي المقصود من الإمامة, because that negates what is sought from the leadership. Yani, the point of the leadership. That is contrary to the point of being in charge. وَأَمَّا قَوْلُهُ وَلَا مُنْتَظَرًا, and as for when he said, nor should he be awaited, يعني أنه ليس من شأن الإمام أن يكون مختفيا عن الناس ينتظر خروجه عند تغير حال الزمان. It means that it's not the case of the Imam that he would be hidden from the people and his coming out is awaited by them when the situation of the time changes. Now he can't come out, but when things change, he can come out. No. وانقطاع مواد الشر والفساد. And his coming out is awaited when the evil stops and the corruption stops, when hilali mazalimi ahli zulmi wal inad, and the occupation of the unjust people is done with. Loose translation there. وَأَمَّا قَوْلُهُ, and as for when he said, وَيَكُونُ مِنْ قُرَيْشٍ, and he would be from Quraysh, وَلَا يَجُوزُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمْ, and it wouldn't be permissible for him to be from someone else. وَذَلِكَ لِحَدِيث, that's because of the hadith, الْأَئِمَّةُ مِنْ قُرَيْشٍ, the Imams, means the Caliphs, are from Quraysh. رواه النسائي والبيهقي وغيرهما, that's narrated by An-Nasafiyyah and Al-Bayhaqi and others. The scholar said, because of the fineness of the opinion of the Qurayshites. Some people don't like that type of stuff. They think it's racist or something. Everything's racist to them anyway. لكن هذا ما دام فيهم من هو صالح للإمامة. However, this is as long as there is amongst them someone who is suitable for the rulership. فإذا فقد فيهم من هو صالح لذلك. So when there is missing from them someone who's suitable for that, فيجوز أن يتولى الإمامة غيره. فيجوز أن يتولى الإمامة غيره. It would be permissible for someone else to take on the rulership. وإنما خص الشرع قريشا بهذا الأمر, and merely the sacred law specifies Quraysh with this matter, لأن قريشا أقوى نبلا في الرأي من غيرهم, because Quraysh are stronger in opinion than others. Subhanallah. So, I wouldn't have known that had it not been for the religion. So that's what came in the religion. That's what the Prophet said. Okie dokie. A-okay. Fine with me. I accept. Radit. قال المؤلف رحمه الله. The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, وَلَا يُشْتَرَطُ فِي الْإِمَامِ أَنْ يَكُونَ مَعْصُومًا. And it's not a condition that the Imam would be impeccable. Also, that's in refutation or in defiance of the Shiites. الشرح أنه ليس من شرط الخليفة أن يكون معصوما بالمعنى الذي هو واجب للأنبياء. The explanation is that it's not a condition for the Caliph to be impeccable with the meaning that is necessary for the prophets. قال المؤلف رحمه الله. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, ولا يكون أفضل أهل زمانه. Nor is it a condition that he would be the best person of his time, the best of the people of his time. الشرح, the explanation. قال التفتزاني. ما نصه. التفتزاني said, quote, وذلك لأن المساوي في الفضيلة بل المفضول الأقل علما وعملا ربما كان أعرف بمصالح الإمامة ومفاسدها وأقدر على القيام بمواجبها خصوصا إذا كان نصب المفضول أدفع للشر وأبعد عن إثارة الفتنة. So At-Taftazani said, and that is because, yani, why he doesn't have to be the best person of his time. That is because someone who is equal in merit to another, in fact, someone who's inferior and less knowledgeable and having less deeds might be actually more competent, more familiar with the welfares of leadership and what ruins the leadership, and more capable of performing what it dictates, what that office dictates. خصوصا إذا كان نصب المفضول أدفع للشر, especially if putting up the inferior one is more repellent or more repelling of evil and further away from inciting unrest. ولهذا جعل عمر رضي الله عنه الإمامة شورى بين ستة. This is why Umar, may Allah accept from him, made the leadership a conference between six. Yani, he selected six and said, choose from these. مع القطع بأن بعضهم أفضل من البعض. He did that with the definitive knowledge on his own part and everyone else's part that some of those six were better religiously, were religiously superior to some of them, to others. Yani, intaha, end quote. Yeah, so take that advice there. You might need that for something less than Caliph. For some issue, you're going to put someone in charge of something. Doesn't mean he has to be the best one. He doesn't have to be the best one religiously, the best Muslim. No. He should be the most qualified one to do the task at hand. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy on him. ويشترط أن يكون من أهل الولاية المطلقة الكاملة. And it is a condition that he would be amongst the people of governance, complete, absolute governance. That's my attempt. Let's see. Let's read the explanation and see how it comes out. الشرح, the explanation, أنه يعني بالولاية هنا التصرف في أمور الناس. The explanation is that what's meant by this word wilaya, that I translated as governance, is disposing of, operating in the matters of the people. ليس المقصود الولاية التي تسبق إلى بعض الأذهان. It's not meant by wilaya here that which would rush to some people's imaginations. We're not saying he needs to be a saint. This wilaya here is not the sainthood. وهي أن يكون الرجل ضمن استقامة تتبعها كرامات وخوارق. The wilaya, which is for a person to be straight upon the obedience and religiousness, unwavering, and in that straightness performing supernatural feats. لأن ذلك ليس شرطا, because that's not a condition. And someone could be very religious, he's not suitable for such tasks. Like some of our mashayikh, or not mashayikh, some of our, let's say, muqaddims, yani some of the people who have been put in charge of some things, of some regions, or some regions, for example, they're not the most knowledgeable ones. But for the leadership that they had, were very well qualified. Like our master Umar ad-Dimashqiyah, rahimahullah. Very competent, qualified for his leadership. But he wasn't most knowledgeable Shaykh. Yani, I don't know if he's Shaykh, rahimahullah. He has knowledge, he has enough knowledge. But for being in charge and being a problem solver and taking care of monies and many, many issues of the people and having the patience, etc., he was very qualified. إنما الشرط أن يكون مسلما عدلا ذكرا عاقلا حرا بالغا. Merely, the condition is that he would be a Muslim, trustworthy, male, sane, free, pubescent. يعني and pubescent. لا امرأة. Not a woman. لأن النساء ناقصات عقل ودين. Shaykh says, because the women are deficient in intellect and religion. That's a general statement, you know. This doesn't mean every single one. Means in comparison to the men. The amount of mind, of intellect and intelligence, intellectual power that Allah gave to men versus women is more in the men than in the women, but not one by one. There could be a woman who has more intellect than a man, but the men versus the women in general, then it's more in the men than in the women. And also in religion, same thing. The religiousness, the religiosity, same thing. And not to mention that the women, they have they have to deal with their feelings about things. This is just being honest here. And they menstruate, which is sometimes a very tough thing for them. I remember sometimes they might make a woman a governor or a judge or something, and sometimes I wonder, like, how is she on one day when her cramps are so bad, she has to go to work, she can't get out of work, her cramps are so bad, she's in such a bad mood, and what's she gonna do? That's real there. Some people will ignore that type of thing. It's very real. I mean, dealing with people's lives here. Very important decisions. وَلَا صَبِيًّا, nor should he be a child, also as opposed to the Shiites. وَمَجْنُونًا, nor insane. لِأَنَّهُمَا قَاصِرَانْ عَنْ تَدْبِيرِ الْأُمُورِ, because the child and the insane person are unqualified to manage affairs. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, سائسا, and a statesman. The imam, he should be a statesman, yani, I might say a politician, but without any bad connotation there. الشرح أي مالكا مقتدرا على التصرف في أمور المسلمين, meaning he should be says Malik, he should be politically competent and able to deal with the matters of the Muslims' affairs. بِقُوَّةِ رَأْيِهِ, by the strength of his opinion. وَرَوِيَّتِهِ, and by his cleverness, his intelligence. وَمَعُونَةِ بَأْسِهِ وَشَوْكَتِهِ, and by the aid of his military force. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, قادرا على تنفيذ الأحكام, and able to execute the rules, وحفظ حدود دار الإسلام, and able to protect the borders of the Islamic abode, وإنصاف المظلوم من الظالم, and able to rescue the wronged one from the wronger, the wrongdoer. SharH, the explanation. فلا يكفي كونه صالحا, so it's not enough that he's merely pious. لأن من الصلحاء من ليس له اهتداء إلى تدبير شؤون البلاد, because amongst the pious people is who is not guided to the management of the affairs of regions, of countries, towns. It's whole, as they say, it's a whole other animal. So you need to be mindful of some things like that. You need to look into people's qualifications for matters, so that you you have a goal, something that needs to be taken care of. You have someone who's qualified to take care of it. If he's able and he's qualified, then if there's no harm and there's benefit, then put him there, even if he's not the best person. The caliphs, we learned, some of them, they used to be afraid of the scholars, as if the scholars were really in charge. The caliph is in charge, though. Someone would be a caliph, he's not a scholar, though. Or he could have knowledge, but there would be like massive scholars. Their knowledge is way beyond his. They intimidate him. He's still in charge, though. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, فلا ولا ينعزل الإمام بالفسق والجور, and the imam is not taken out of his position for a major sin, nor for injustice. Subhanallah. Some of the, when I'm not even talking about a caliph here, just some of the people who are in charge in some places, because some people don't like the choices they make, some people think things should be run another way, they try to get those brothers out of their position. Like they'll go to Shaykh Hussein, for example, to complain to him about Fulan, who's in charge. Well, they don't think, who's they gonna put in his place? That part they didn't figure that part out yet, though. الشرح, the explanation, أنه لا يشترط أن يستمر على صفة العدالة, is that it's not a condition for the imam, the caliph, to remain always consistently upon the description of trustworthiness. Yani he's not going to lose his position if he became a sinner. لأن كثيرا من الذين تولوا أمور المسلمين, because many of those who were put in charge of the matters of the Muslims, بل أغلبهم لم يسلموا من خوارم العدالة. In fact, most of them were not clear of what compromises their trustworthiness. ومع ذلك فجمهور المسلمين أقرّوهم على ولايتهم. Despite that, the majority of the Muslims kept them in their leadership positions. وقال بعض مشايخ الحنفية, and some Hanafi sheikhs said, إذا قلد الفاسق ابتداء صح. If a person were a major sinner, but he was put in charge, if a person were put in charge as a major sinner from the beginning, it's valid. وَلَوْ قُلِّدَ وَهُوَ عَدْلٌ يَنْعَزِلُ بِالْفِسْقِ. And if he were put in charge as trustworthy, then he would be removed by a major sin. That's what some of them said. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. Any question? Wa alaykum assalam. And I have in my notes that this point here that some of the Hanafi Shaykh said is true for a judge, though. Judge is different from Caliph. True for a judge. Yeah, go ahead, please.
That's why they do not go against the Caliph. Because even though he might not be the most upright person, but he's one who's qualified.
Can you start over, please? I didn't catch some of what you said.
Isn't it right that? Isn't that why we don't go against the Caliph? Because he may not be the most upright Muslim, but he's the most qualified to lead.
What I learned that this is not exactly why we don't go against the Caliph. We don't go against the Caliph once he's in power, because that's going to lead to worse situation, which is the deaths of Muslims and the destruction of property. Because it's going to fight back. So we're talking about here, this is real politics here. Subhanallah. It's a strategy. Yani, I know personally, I learned some good lessons from this here when I learned about this. Makes you understand some things, differentiate between things, and even make you think about your own case. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khayra. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.